je crois. Hein. Enfin bref. Très très bien Philosophie Tube. Je vous renvoie la chaîne, hein, bien sûr. Hop. Si j'étais pas, j'aurais démissionné, no worries. Ah bon, ça va alors. Ça va. Ça passe. Continuons. On passe...
Hi,
on passe à Octopus Lady qui nous parle de Dark Oxygen et de trucs qui vont nous faire doomer aussi, mais pas pareil. Je vous envoie le lien de la chaîne d'Octopus Lady qui est quand même sacrément chouette. Hein, qui parle notamment de biologie marine et c'est très très cool. Voilà, si vous voulez en apprendre plus sur les frogfish, hein, voilà, ou sur plein de trucs, ou sur les mantis shrimp, ou voilà, si vous voulez, c'est vachement bien. Et en plus de ça, elle est LGBT friendly, très très fort, notamment grâce à cette vidéo, elle le montre très bien, la vidéo sur les poissons clowns. Voilà. Mais bref, reprenons. Et donc là, ça va parler de pas forcément un truc vivant, mais un truc qui est un peu utile à la vie. Vous allez voir.
Octopus Lady, you're watching Alien Ocean and...
Ah, attendez, il n'y a pas de sous-titres. Pourquoi il n'y a pas de sous-titres Anglais génère automatiquement français. D'accord, ok. Bon.
Let's talk about dark oxygen today, shall we? So if you haven't heard, there was a paper released recently titled Evidence of Dark Oxygen Production at the Abyssal Sea Floor, and it kind of got everyone's attention, myself included. The basic rundown is, a bunch of researchers sailed out into an area of the ocean called the CCZ, or the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, and measured oxygen levels along the abyssal plain, which is this flat area of the seafloor that's about 3,000 to 6,000 meters below. But these researchers were doing their study at around 4,000 meters below. And there, in the oppressive, crushing darkness that is the bottom of the ocean, they discovered dark oxygen production, or DOP. Now, what the heck is dark oxygen? Is it...
Alors, je résume quand même pour les gens qui ont eu un peu de mal à suivre parce que ça allait un peu vite. Des gens sont allés dans une zone du Pacifique pour mesurer des niveaux d'oxygène dans des plaines abyssales. Vous allez voir plus tard dans la vidéo qu'en fait, ces scientifiques s'attendaient à des niveaux très bas. Et ils ont été surpris par quelque chose.
Is it some sort of aesthetic, like dark academia? Is it the twisted, mirrored version of regular oxygen, kind of like Superman and Bizarro? Is it like dark matter? Whatever dark matter is? I don't know what dark matter is because I don't study physics, because I'm not a nerd. Well, it's...
Voilà, techno, ça c'est pour toi.
None of that. Quite simply, dark oxygen is molecular oxygen, or O2, that is produced through non-photosynthetic means, which might not sound very...
Merci. Bref. Mais donc oui, le dark oxygen, du coup, c'est de l'oxygène, ou plutôt du dioxygène, enfin bref, qui est produit autrement que par la photosynthèse.
Exciting, but this is a big deal. Almost all molecular oxygen on this planet is...
My bad, j'ai appuyé sans le vouloir sur le truc du Game Pass alors que je l'ai pas ouvert depuis 20 000 ans. Je l'ai fermé.
Produced through photosynthesis, and therefore requires sunlight. But famously, there is no sunlight at the bottom of the ocean. So what's going on here? Let's break this study down. First off, how did...
Alors qu'elle parle de réaction chimique, mais bon. Oui, mais c'est de la chimie, pas de la physique. Non mais évidemment qu'elle te troll et qu'elle troll les physiciens, mais elle est parfaitement au courant que... t'inquiète. Dans 2 secondes. Quitter le... Voilà.
How did they even figure out that DOP was happening at the ocean floor? Well, they measured it. That's basically it. They pushed a bunch of chambers into the ocean floor sediment to, quote, create an enclosed microcosm of the sea floor, and then there were little devices in the chambers that took measurements of oxygen levels at regular intervals over a set period of time, and from that, they saw that oxygen levels went up, as you can see in these graphs. What's funny is they weren't actually in the CCV to study dark oxygen production. They didn't even know DOP was occurring there. They were there to study sediment community O2 consumption, or SC VOC, which is the rate at which organisms that live in seafloor sediment consume oxygen. So they were expecting O2 levels to go down, not up. And they were so baffled
Surprise.
by their data.
Mais là, effectivement, surprise, oui.
They were convinced that their oxygen measuring devices were broken, but they weren't. They were working just fine. So this led to the next question. There's something producing oxygen down there. What's producing oxygen down there? And the researchers are pretty sure it's these polymetallic nodules, which are lumpy, potato-sized rocks composed of different kinds of metals that are scattered all over the place. Now, this is a weird thought, right? Because lumpy metallic rocks aren't alive, and most oxygen produced on Earth is from alive things.
Ça me touche en vrai, moi qui rappelle tout le temps aux élèves que les sciences, c'est pas que la physique et les maths. Oui. Non mais oui, en effet, la science, ce n'est pas que la physique et les maths. La biologie, c'est aussi de la science. Oui. Les sciences sociales, c'est aussi des sciences. Tout un tas de sciences qui sont souvent oubliées, parfois exprès, parfois non, par plein de gens, c'est des sciences. Ce genre de take, même pour la blague, j'ai du mal, mais bon. Oui, certes, effectivement. Je peux comprendre. Après, c'est effectivement un trope dont elle a déjà parlé dans une autre de ces vidéos où justement elle disait qu'au contraire, enfin voilà quoi, mais oui, certes, effectivement, je peux comprendre. Mais bref, passons. Mais oui, tu as raison, pour le coup.
No, O2 is coming from the nodules and not from anything else? Which is a good question. A huge chunk of this paper is the researchers going through all the different reasons why they think the oxygen is being produced by the nodules, but I'm not going to summarize all of that here. I'm just going to summarize the one.
Et je précise d'ailleurs que elle a même pas de formation en biologie et tout, hein. Elle est juste passionnée par la biologie. Juste, elle a tendance à beaucoup regarder des papiers scientifiques, mais elle comprend pas tout ce qu'elle lit et elle le dit très fortement aussi, accessoirement.
I think are the most interesting. There have been reports of microbes that live in sunless places that are capable of producing dark oxygen, so maybe there were microbes in the sediment that were responsible. But when the researchers examined samples of sediment taken from within the test chambers, they found toxic levels of mercury chloride. So if there were any microbes, they were dead. Well, maybe some gas bubbles from the surface got trapped in the chambers, and that's where the oxygen was coming from. But that is not possible because there were one-way valves on the chambers that released air as they sunk. And, quote, even if an air bubble could be trapped long enough to reach the sea floor, gaseous diffusion of O2 into the water phase would take less than 1 second at 4,000 meters depth, which means we would see a spike in O2 levels on these graphs and not this steady increase. And then finally, they did some testing in a lab and not in the ocean, where one of the experiments they did was just chucking some nodules and water into a bucket and left it in a dark room for a few days. They measured O2 levels at the start of the experiment and then at the end of the experiment, and sure enough, the oxygen levels increased over that period of time in the nodule bucket. That's so much fun to say. The next question was, how are the nodules doing this? And the answer might be electrolysis. And I don't really want to explain what electrolysis is because I'm trying to keep this video short, but it's basically using electricity to force a chemical reaction that normally wouldn't happen on its own. When you send an electrical current through water specifically, that causes water molecules to split into H2, hydrogen gas, and O2, oxygen gas. If you want a more detailed explanation of electrolysis, I like Fuse School's brief overview.
J'y pense, mais du coup, si tu veux voir si c'est bien ça qui se passe, faudrait pas aussi mesurer du coup les niveaux d'hydrogène? Bref.
Of it, and Tyler DeWitt's longer overview of it. But long story short, to do electrolysis, you need
après, vu que là, la recherche en question n'était même pas basée là-dessus, et que c'est juste une hypothèse, bon, voilà, mais in fine, je suppose que dans la recherche, s'il y avait une recherche effectivement qui vous visait à savoir si c'est l'électrolyse, il y aurait ça qui se mettrait en place. Très bien, ok. C'est bien ça.
Source of energy, which potentially could be coming from the nodules themselves. They might be acting like batteries. When the researchers measured the electrical potentials of different nodules they collected, they found some that were as high as 0.95 volts, which is apparently almost as high as a AA battery and may be enough to split water. Maybe. It depends on a bunch of things, including the composition of the nodules themselves. A nodule that contains a certain
effectivement, déjà trouver trop d'oxygène, de dioxygène, c'est déjà quelque chose de fort. C'est déjà une grosse découverte. Et vous allez voir que la vidéo va vous faire doumer plus tard.
Of metals might only need 0.95 volts of electricity to do electrolysis, but a nodule that contains a certain...
Là, si vous voyez pas comment ça peut vous faire doumer, vous inquiétez pas, ça va arriver et ça va être...
kinds of other metals might need more energy or less. They don't really know yet. The researchers need to do more investigating. Also, the amount of surface area that's exposed on a nodule seems to affect the amount of O2 that gets produced. You see how on the graphs there's a steady increase of DOP and then it levels off? The researchers think this is because the lander that they used to set up the chambers might have blown a bunch of sediment off the nodules and therefore increased the amount of surface area that was in contact with the water, which could have resulted in a bunch of electrolysis happening, and therefore a bunch of dark oxygen getting produced, causing this initial steady increase of O2. And then it levels off.
Ce qui veut dire que si jamais il y a un poisson qui passe à côté, effectivement, ça peut produire un petit peu plus de dark oxygène autour du poisson. Marrant.
As the nodules, for lack of a better phrase, get used up. This is an oversimplification, but you know, try to think of it in a similar way to how a battery gets used up when you use it to do a bunch of electrical things. If the nodules are in fact acting like batteries and are splitting water through electrolysis. This is just a hypothesis, they don't know for sure. These researchers just discovered DOP at the bottom of the ocean. They're not going to have all the answers to all the questions, especially when they weren't even looking for dark oxygen production in the first place. So when I was first reading this paper, I was thinking to myself, man, what sort of implications does this discovery have for like how Earth became oxygenated? Because for a good chunk of this planet's existence, there wasn't a ton of O2 around. And it wasn't until it showed up that we started to see evidence of multicellular life here on Earth. So these nodules, are they the reason we're here, breathing what we're breathing right now? And then I was like, wait, could nodules like these on other planets maybe help create the conditions needed to facilitate life? And then I was like, wait, do these nodules mean that the hydrothermal vents are actually truly independent from the sun? If you're confused about that last one, go watch my video about the hydrothermal vents. But
oui, effectivement, les trucs autour des cheminées hydrothermales au fond des abysses, c'est des écosystèmes qui sont hyper intéressants. Et elle a fait une vidéo dessus, et c'est cool. Voilà.
Then I found out that...
Alors, c'est des questions posées depuis... Oula. Oui, mais c'est juste qu'en fait, elle avec la découverte de ça, elle s'est rendue compte de ça. Elle est venue à cette conclusion-là en mode mais attends. Mais en fait, en vrai, même moi, je m'étais posé la question avant, tu vois. Mais quand même. Mais vous allez voir, il y a un truc intéressant. Que pour le coup, j'étais au courant avant de voir cette vidéo, mais que la vidéo là va le résumer plutôt bien, et c'est à l'aide.
Only form in highly oxygenated water, so they're not the reason we have so much O2 on this planet, which is a bit of a bummer, but that doesn't mean that these nodules aren't currently extremely important. I know when you look at a picture like this, it seems like we're just looking at a bunch of dirt and rocks, but this is actually an ecosystem. Animals live here, many of which we've never seen before and are completely new to science. And they're all under threat because of deep sea mining. There are companies that want to harvest the nodules so they can turn them into actual batteries that we can use in electric cars and stuff, but we only have a vague idea of what sort of role these nodules play in this ecosystem. And we should probably figure that out before we start ganking them and doing what is most likely irreparable harm to these creatures and their home.
Évidemment, regardez, au fond de l'eau, il y a tout un tas de petits cailloux qui pourraient être utilisés comme étant des batteries une fois raffinées. Pourquoi pas les prendre, ils traînent là. Bah zut, alors encore un écosystème qu'on est en train de piétiner juste parce qu'on a besoin de faire des batteries de voitures électriques. Merci Tesla.
Make a whole separate video about deep sea
et
mining.
Tous les autres. Et peu importe. Ou des batteries de téléphone aussi. Enfin bref.
But honestly, that's probably never going to happen because the whole topic just makes me really sad, and I don't think I have the mental fortitude to let it be the focus of my attention for the several weeks it takes me to make a video.
Et je la comprends très fort, et je respecte le fait qu'elle ait pas envie de faire une vidéo entièrement basée sur le deep sea mining, mais parce que c'est pas un sujet marrant. Mais ouais. Voilà.
If I did, it would probably just end up being a less good version of last week tonight's segment about deep sea mining that came out a few months ago, which I thought was really well done. So go check that out if you want to learn more. Thanks for watching another episode of Alien.
Voilà. Merci d'avoir regardé. C'est bien, ça a duré moins de 10 minutes, mais vous savez quoi? C'est quand même déprimant. J'arriverai à vous faire déprimer pendant tout le long de ce live, c'est terrible. Et ce, sans même parler une seule fois d'Israël. Oh, wait. Et merde. Non, clairement, dur. Par contre, je suis en train de réaliser ce vers quoi on se dirige comme vidéo. Et encore un bot. Vous avez le 3e aujourd'hui. Je suis en train de réaliser ce vers quoi on se dirige comme vidéo. Et je vais faire un très gros trigger warning sur cette vidéo-là. Alors attention. Je vais vous envoyer la chaîne de Cécile Lily, qui est quand même vachement chouette. Hein, surtout si vous êtes fan de Pokémon, entre autres. Mais on va parler de comment ça s'appelle, de transidentité et de comment ça s'appelle, j'ai plus le nom, de psychiatrisation de la transidentité et psychophobie et tout ça. Et trigger warning, à un moment ça va littéralement parler d'un holocauste. Voilà, vous êtes prévenus. C'est notamment à partir de cette partie-là, vers 20 minutes, où ça va commencer à en parler et que ça va être vénère. Voilà. C'est parti.
No.
Voilà, merci pour cette vidéo, Cécile Lily, bravo. Bravo. Oui, elle répondait juste à la question de la vidéo. Est-ce que être trans, c'est une maladie mentale? Non. Voilà, merci.
Wait, what?
Ok, alors attendez. Je regarde juste. Oh, ils sont très bien, les sous-titres. Parfait.
They're gonna want more arguments than that? Oh, come on, do I really need to? What is this, high school debate club?
The North Star here is transgenderism is a mental health disorder.
Good one, she/her. The internet will never fix your real threat, depression.
Transgenderism is a mental disorder.
If you have a mental disorder, that's fine. You know, I don't need to come up to you and tell you that I think you have a mental disorder. That would be rude.
Pourtant, Bobati a dit qu'il fallait soigner nos corps et nos âmes. Pour ça, faudrait déjà ne pas avoir vendu son âme au capitalisme, hein, Bobati. Bref.
Right. But when you have a mental disorder and you're now requiring that I have a mental disorder, right, to meet your mental disorder, that doesn't work for me.
Conservatives are the best. I love them, such lovely people.
Pourquoi il y a un bug avec le son, là,
They pay so much attention
elle a peut-être un petit souci avec son micro en début de vidéo.
to the well-being of minorities in general. They're always concerned about the sexual health of women and the mental health of transgender people. They care so much. Where would we be without them? One of the latest examples of conservative kindness was real-life Tony Stark, haver of multiple gender-reaffirming surgeries and 5-time Father of the Year nominee, Elon Musk, who went on record to talk about his daughter's
À l'aide,
condition.
Elon Cisgender Musk.
He was so concerned that the
C'est quand même la meilleure chose qu'on puisse dire de lui. Hein. C'est vraiment...
person he described as a slightly autistic gay boy went on to be poisoned by the woke mind virus and ended up taking very dangerous drugs against her better judgment. Such a
Oh là là.
loving and caring father. I'm sure all of his concerns are genuine. This interview was shared everywhere online until his daughter, Vivian, replied saying that everything her dad said is false. He wouldn't know anything about her childhood because he
Dis le
wasn't
fasciste,
there, and told her now disowned father to stop with his ketamine-fueled haze and go touch some grass.
I'm not just a bitch. I'm a bitch with a backstory.
Vivian said that the thing she thought was the most funny was Elon's slightly autistic comment. She said she didn't even know where he got this from. Probably from the Milo Yiannopoulos School of Gay Stereotypes. Just picked a random one and said, good enough. She never had a love of musicals and theater. She hated Hamilton. She never picked up fabulous
Apparemment, Cécile Lily aime bien Hamilton.
jackets for him to wear. The whole thing is made up. He doesn't know what I was like as a child because he quite simply wasn't there. I was relentlessly harassed for my femininity and queerness. Obviously, he can't say that, so I've been reduced to a happy little stereotype fagging along to use at his discretion. Such a concerned and caring father. But okay, let's give a second thought to the subject now. Why are conservatives really that concerned about whether trans people are going through mental struggles or not? Is it out of a real interest in our well-being and to guarantee we will have access to the healthcare we deserve? Musk himself has talked about the common association between identifying as transgender and autism, and some weird comments on my videos sure love to remind me about correlations between transness and depression and high in the life.
Les sous-titres, des fois, ils sont un petit peu... dans les sous-titres, il y a marqué transsexualité. Bon, voilà, hein.
Rate. They seem so concerned. Why else would they bring this up? I'm not sure if you, dear stranger line, have noticed this already, but I have the impression that there are quite a few people who don't really dig the idea that trans people are a thing. I don't know, it's crazy. It might be because the fact that we have the autonomy to radically define what is expected of our bodies is a powerful challenge against a very strict model of binarity that reinforces most of the power relations in a patriarchal, capital-centered society, or...
Elle spit énormément de fax, là.
Because we just kinda give them the ick. I don't know. But it looks like they don't really vibe with us. So, could it be that maybe they need to have an excuse to say that we don't have the right to be as we are? A reason to force us to conform to how they want us to be.
Less word and still more accurate than Bobatti. Oui, oui.
And obey a rigid structure. Of course, you cannot force a consenting adult to not transition, but maybe by saying, ooh, poor children, they will be influenced by you to form their own identities, or you people are all freaks and also autistic, and also it's just mental illness when you are something but you believe you are something else. Then maybe they could strip away our power to wear a skirt that goes spinny. Like, fair point, right? We trans people go around identifying as chairs or attack helicopters. At some point, people will start wondering if we have, something not working properly.
Ouais, alors, juste comme ça, mais ces trucs-là sont souvent pour la blague, pour se réapproprier le fait qu'il y a à la base des insultes en mode haha, et puis quoi encore, vous allez vous identifier comme un hélicoptère d'attaque, haha. Bah, du coup, t'as des personnes qui sont là en mode bah viens, on reprend l'hélicoptère d'attaque et on en fait un truc à nous. Voilà, évidemment. Mais à la base, c'est surtout une insulte oppressive, notamment NB-phobe, notamment, mais pas que. Mais voilà quoi.
A few months ago, I released my most popular video on this channel yet, which was a story about a 20-year-old esports player saying that they respect gay and lesbian people, but would never support people changing their gender. In their own words, changing gender is a mental illness.
La vidéo dont elle parle, on l'a passée ici, hein, c'est la vidéo... si je regarde vite fait, bah ouais, c'est ça en fait, la vidéo sur Pokérog, voilà, qui était très 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 bien, et notamment sur pourquoi Pokémon c'est inhéremment politique et tout un tas d'autres trucs. C'est vraiment très très bien comme vidéo. N'hésitez pas à aller la regarder, même si vous ne jouez pas particulièrement à Pokémon, c'est vraiment bien. Peut-être que ça pourrait vous donner envie de jouer à Pokémon, on sait jamais. Bref.
bold statement to say, mostly when you have absolutely nothing backing it up, and I shrugged it off because I didn't want to dive deep into research and arguments and read psychiatry theory to answer my own personal question of what is really a sickness of the mind. Brains are super complicated. Even people who dedicate their entire lives to studying neuroscience seem to have a hard time understanding how the brain works because it's weird and oftentimes makes no sense. If that's the case, how can we define when it's behaving properly or not? How can somebody just step out of the blue and say, this is a normal mind? That was not my focus.
Moi le corps entier devient transparent, que mon cerveau émet de la lumière et que les gens disent non, c'est exactement ça. C'est vraiment le... Attendez. Voilà. Ça c'est la norme de demain. Nous devrons tous être transparents et avoir nos cerveaux qui brillent. Entre Pikmin et Pokémon, je vais plus m'en sortir maintenant. Oui, je continuerai de dire que Pikmin est un petit peu anticapitaliste, au moins pour les 2 premiers épisodes de la licence. Oui. Au moins un peu. Du moins, tu peux en avoir une lecture de anticapitaliste. Tout ce harcèlement d'Axe. Oh non.
That was not my focus on that video, and I was called out in the comment section by some people saying that I was avoiding the question, but not today, babes. Today we are in for a ride. Today I'm giving you my best capabilities as an inspiring video essayist. Today we are quoting Foucault. Today we are going elbows deep in Marxist theory, and we are going to look at some of the most horrendous crimes ever committed in the history of humanity.
Cette image de Marx, de Kawaii Marx me hantera pour le reste de la soirée.
So please remember, there is a very big trigger warning for this video.
Voilà.
We will literally tick all the boxes in this one. I'm serious. According to the American Psychiatry Association, a mental illness is... Actually, I don't care. And spoiler alert, they don't care either. In this video, dear stranger online, I will entertain the idea that accusing...
Ouais, on ne va pas définir ce que c'est qu'une maladie mentale parce que ça sert pas à grand chose dans le cadre de cette vidéo, en effet. Et que de toute façon... Voilà. Voilà, hein. Ouais, ça sert à rien.
People of not having full mental capacity is nothing more than an excuse to take away our right to make decisions or have autonomy over our bodies. If we were, for lack of a better word, mentally unwell, this would mean we would suddenly need to have our actions policed and our ability to define our identities put into questioning. And that's such a funny...
Comment ça, oupsie, techno? C'est pas littéralement... Ah mais non, tu joues quel gameplay déjà? Tu joues science là? Ah, si t'as réussi à buter la religion de quelqu'un en jouant science, c'est fort. Hein. Ah, plus catholicisme. Ah, oupsie. Pas super, quoi. Oui, on précise, Techno est en train de jouer à Civ 6, bien sûr.
Hill to die on, right? Because I don't remember ever being really delusional about anything. I don't think I'm an attack helicopter, and neither have I ever met somebody who does. Never ever did I have the impression that my organs are not the ones that they are, or that my chromosomes are any different than what my test results said. Actually, it's funny to talk about chromosomes because trans people will often have to have theirs checked out before going into HRT. Cis people instead can go through their entire lives and never once have their chromosomes brought into a single conversation, never even know for sure which chromosomes a test would reveal to them.
Ce qui est fun du coup, c'est que à partir de ce constat, on peut effectivement, si demain on fait des tests avec tout le monde, avoir des sacrées surprises. Ce serait très rigolo. Mais bon, bref. Vous voyez des éclairs dans la gueule des missionnaires adverses. Ah.
Thinking like, if we all of a sudden decide to test everyone just for the funsies, I'm sure.
Non mais en fait c'est exactement ce qu'elle dit.
Gender critical accounts online would be in for a huge surprise. But now, chromosome reveal party. For me to say that I have been tested and confirmed to have XY chromosomes and I still want to use she/her pronouns? There must be something deeply wrong with my brain. Should I receive a diagnosis? Be put inside a pathology? Trans people know who we are. We know we exist in a segregated and marginal...
Elle se débat quand même avec ses cheveux. Hein. Bon bah... Pardon.
social class, separated from cisgenderness. We are very well aware of the material reality of our bodies and our places in society. I am a woman because I live the life of a woman. I am socially perceived as a woman, and I am treated by everyone around me, including multiple national states, as a woman. You can notice that I never mentioned that I live the life of a cis woman, and I'm aware I don't, in a lot of small ways that, frankly, don't bother me in the slightest. But the life I live is the one I always wanted, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But enough about me. Let's talk about the school anarchist scene about the other day.
What makes something a disease or a syndrome? My body changes, yet diagnoses are so permanent, so easy